Okay, we're going to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today I have a really cool review for you from the brand Hitori Watch Company. Now a little bit about them. They are influenced by Japanese culture, and this is an in-house brand for Nomen Watches, who are an authorized dealer for various Seiko lines. Now in terms of the type of watch, some of you will be keen to notice this is considered probably an everyday dress watch. Some key characteristics in design language would be a clean, classic, minimalist design and something that is, of course, sensibly sized. This is their Yoshino Snowdrift in white, and it is a 70-piece limited edition. This is 69 of 70. As of the time of recording this, these are actually all sold out already. But I did want to make sure to still share this with you guys because I'm sure there will be future editions. Now, Hitori Watch Company's third model, this is the Yoshino. Essentially, it's following up their SBGA413 like kind of Ryuku diver line, as well as their SARB kind of snowflake like Habuka. The Yoshino watches are significantly inspired by the cherry blossoms of Mount Yoshiyama, and located in the town and district of Yoshino itself in the Nara prefecture. Now, of course, this is going to be paying homage to Grand Seiko's modern 62GS reinterpretations, the SBGA415 and 413. You can get these for $389 direct from Nomen Watches. Of course, they are fully sold out now, but definitely keep an eye out, whether it be on their socials or on their website itself, because again, I'm sure there will be future runs, especially considering how small the production batch was for this initial run. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and get this piece in hand. And some of you might not be able to get over the fact that, of course, the design is quite derivative, but I will say the level of attention to detail and effort is also derivative, because they really did try to recreate a luxury timepiece, multiples of thousands of dollars, of course done for under $400. So there has to be some level of kind of resetting your expectations here, and if you're not okay with an homage, then that's absolutely fine. The good news is Grand Seiko isn't quite as popular as a lot of other mainstream brands, and it's definitely more of a connoisseur's brand. Yes, they definitely are bigger than they've ever been, but the average person might not recognize something like this, and they might just see it as a really, really cool, well-detailed piece. And the closer they look, the more they're going to find some of those details to fall in love with. Guys, look at the beveling work, the multiple finishes and facets, the blued seconds hand, that end cap on the hand stack, the multiple finishes on the dial furniture with those indices. It is all just very, very nice, and honestly quite comparable to something like, let's say, this discontinued Seiko Presage Sarks 055. Of course, this is going to be titanium, but when you look at the effort in terms of the finish there, guys, it is going to be quite comparable. Check out the bevels. Now again, not although it is going to have the look of a Grand Seiko, the finishing, this isn't hand finished Zaratsu polish, guys, but the transitions on those bevels are very, very nice. And again, the Presage is not a cheap watch by any means. Slightly better movement because it has a 6R movement versus the NH, which is essentially a 4R, so you're not going to get the Sprawn hairspring or the extended power reserve, but you have a lot of the same things that make it good. And in terms of the scale, it definitely has a very similar wear profile. Now, getting into those details, you're getting a 39.6 millimeter diameter, 12.3 millimeter thickness, 47 millimeters lug to lug, all stainless steel, brushed and polished with a beautiful box dome sapphire with inner AR coating. And you can see that it must be double domed, because even at the harshest angles, this dial is extremely legible. Check out that hand stack, still rendering extremely sharp there, guys. Really beautiful. And the texture, of course, on this dial is absolutely captivating. So they chose quite a subject in terms of what they wanted to reproduce, and they did one heck of a job. trying to achieve that. Now the crown is screw down and signed, which is good news, because now that means that 100 meters of water resistance is just going to be that much more confidence inspiring, because you know your crown will be pushed in. And then we take a look at the case back. Check that out, guys. You actually do have a display case back with a custom heat treated rotor. You can see that actually does have, you know, some gradation, some rainbow to it, and even the coating on that display back even gives you some more color play. So very cool. I like that they didn't just, you know, settle for doing less. They wanted to really kind of give you some visual interest on the backside as well, and I can really appreciate that. That NH35, again, workhorse movement, great shock resistance, so very good from that perspective, especially at the price point, guys, under $400. Now, the indices here are nicely applied and multifaceted. The dial is textured and white with a framed date at the 3 o'clock, brushed and faceted hour and minute hands with that blued second hand, and of course that hand stack cap. A lot of great details, 100 meters of water resistance, and you're going to feel quite a good amount of confidence with that water resistance because you do have the screw down crown. You have 20 millimeter lugs here. They're female lugs. Everything is solid. You can see a very nice finish on here. You get the rolled beveled edge there, high polished on the edges, high polish on the center links of this 5-link style bracelet that does taper pretty nicely, as you can see there. Coming to also one thing to note, check that out, screw in pins. A lot of people love that. And then of course this milled clasp, which I will say when you want to close it, the tolerances are very tight. You're going to want to push the button, pop it down, and then flip it, and you have it also nicely signed, and I think really well scaled in terms of the size, not overpowering or anything like that. And I think it's quite balanced with all those manual micro adjust holes. Definitely works very well. So with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears really beautifully well. It has all of those Seiko / Grand Seiko tricks in terms of making the watch wear very ergonomically, great hugging of the wrist. Although it's not ultra thin, I wouldn't call it thick, especially since a decent amount of that thickness comes from that protruding crystal. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to get some perspective distortion. So what I'll do is I'll keep my wrist nice and low here, and then we'll just tighten up the shot so that you can take a detailed look while still keeping a truer aspect ratio of how this may lay on your own wrist. And of course, although my wrist is slightly larger at 7.5 inches, it's actually quite round, as you can see. So it's not like I have this thin, very flat, very accommodating wrist. I still have to pay a decent amount of attention to lug width, but you can see here, this is beautifully centered. It sits very nicely, and all of that polishing and faceting really does a great job of just reflecting and keeping things just feeling a bit trimmer on the wrist than you might expect for something that measures at about 12 millimeters thick. And again, you know, you subtract that crystal and you're probably closer to 10 millimeters thin. So really quite nice, guys. I like the way this sits. I like the way everything lays. I'm really looking forward to seeing what future, variations they do of this piece, just because the level of execution on it is so high and so impressive that, yeah, again, maybe they'll do something with a slightly pink tone to it, blues, greens. There's just so many options, even going back towards the original Grand Seiko kind of inspirations, maybe something with a kind of smoky gray dial would also be possible. So with that said, let's actually get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, now did I say Lume shots? Absolutely not, no Lume shots. But One thing I always like to work in, of course, is a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, to maybe even include a bit of harsh lighting that typically could expose any types of production defects. But all you're going to see here is just a whole lot of beauty. Very nice, deep, glossy polish there, and beautifully even and uniform satin brushing. Very, very nice. And you can tell there is genuine texture to that dial. It's not just printed on there in a certain way. It definitely has a certain 3D nature, and you can really see that shine in the way that it plays with the light, in terms of reflecting at certain points, absorbing, and everything in between. So very, very nice, guys. And of course the handset's gorgeous. Goodness, check that out, those indices. Even in the lower lighting settings, you're still going to get a decent amount of contrast, even as you can see here, because of those high polished surfaces blended in with the satin brushing. So really quite nice. So closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, nice Goldilocks proportions, that 39mm width by that 47mm lug-to-lug footprint keeps it versatile across many, many wrist sizes. This wears surprisingly similar, again, to that discontinued Sarks 055 Baby Snowflake. Those have gone up in value, so something like this could definitely be a nice option. In terms of model variants, none yet, but I'm sure this platform won't go to waste. But I wouldn't be surprised if they did a couple of more limited runs. So definitely keep an eye on their website as well as their social media in terms of Nomen Watches as the dealer. Comparable models, guys, in the sub $400 price tag range. I'd say this really carves out its own niche as a super affordable Homage. With a pretty legit spec list, guys, and a screw down crown that's good for 100 meters of water resistance. So that, plus you're getting the sapphire crystal, a hacking hand windable movement, and drilled lugs. I mean, there's a lot to like here. Now, although the dial isn't quite finished to the level of, maybe any of the nicer comparative Seiko Presage line of baby snowflakes, which there's quite a few variations, which you guys have seen on my channel in the past. I would say the design itself and relatively low cost make it still quite enticing. So for me, guys, the bottom line is, although a very clear Homage, it does impressively step up to the task of trying to emulate a truly luxurious hand-worked timepiece that, if you can find one of these, I think it will surely impress you, and especially at the price point when you consider all that. So guys, I think this is a real winner. I can see why it sold out so fast, but for those of you that missed the boat, definitely, again, keep an eye out, because I have a very distinct feeling you'll be seeing more of these in the future. So with that said, let me know what you guys all think. This isn't the first time a dealer, an authorized dealer, has put out a similar Homage to the types of watches that they carry. And typically when dealers do that, it seems to work out pretty well. So with all that said, let me know what you all think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.